Hey guys, this is Evan from Easy Origami, and today we're going to explore a new family of origami designs called Bloom patterns, invented by Kelvin Wang. First, I'll give you some background on Bloom patterns and their potential real-world applications, and then I'll teach you how to fold one of your own. For some context, I recently spoke with Dr. Robert J. Lang, one of my greatest inspirations and one of the most accomplished origami artists of all time. He mentioned that he had been working with a research group at Brigham Young University on a new paper exploring a family of origami designs called Bloom patterns. He then introduced me to Dr. Larry Howell, a professor at BYU who leads the research group and specializes in origami-inspired compliant mechanisms. I also met with Kelvin Wang, a student at BYU who led the research for the paper and invented the family of origami Bloom patterns. The paper itself, authored by Kelvin Wang, Dr. Lang, and Dr. Howell, was just published today by the Royal Society, so I'm really excited to share their research with you. The paper is titled Bloom Patterns, Radially Expansive, Developable, and Flat-Foldable Origami. So at this point you may be wondering, what is a Bloom pattern? As the title of the paper suggests, Bloom patterns are flat-foldable, meaning they can be folded into a flat, compact shape. They are also radially expansive and developable, meaning they can be unfolded in all directions at once to become a large flat sheet. These properties are especially useful for deploying objects in space. For example, in order to transport a solar array that generates power for a satellite, it must first be collapsed into a small shape to fit inside of a rocket, and then it must be unfolded to a much larger size once it reaches its final destination. Another property of Bloom patterns is that they can be collapsed from a flat sheet without stretching or compressing the material that they're made out of, and this allows them to be created from materials other than paper. Here's a 3D printed version of the Bloom pattern that I'll be teaching you today. This one was printed and folded by Davis Wing, a BYU student also involved in this research. The paper goes into more specifics about Bloom pattern classification, but it's important to mention that different families of Bloom patterns can be created by simply tweaking their crease patterns. By changing the number of sides of the central polygon, or by changing the number or type of wedge crease patterns tiled around it, you can create all sorts of uniquely beautiful Bloom patterns tailored for specific applications. To learn more about Bloom patterns, I highly recommend looking at the research paper and checking out the extra resources in the video description below. Today we'll be folding the Y6.2 Bloom pattern. The Y stands for Yoshimura, since the wedge crease patterns around the central polygon are derived from Yoshimura origami patterns. The 6 indicates that the central polygon has 6 sides, and the 2 indicates that this is a second-order Bloom, meaning it has 2 iterations of wedge crease patterns surrounding the central hexagon. And by simply expanding that same tessellation, you can easily create higher-order Blooms. In order to fold the Y6.2 Bloom, you'll need to prepare 1 hexagonal sheet of paper. For your first time, I recommend starting with a hexagon that is at least 6 inches wide. A 6-inch hexagon will result in a collapsed Bloom that is 2 inches wide. I also highly recommend starting with a blank hexagon to avoid any unnecessary pre-creases. To do so, you can print out the template linked in the video description and cut out a blank hexagon from there, or you can use a cutting machine like a Cricut or a Cameo, or you can use a hexagonal cutting template, whichever method is easiest for you. And I'm going to be using paper with color on one side and white on the other just to make it a bit easier to follow along, but feel free to use paper with color on both sides. And once you've prepared your paper, then you want to start with your hexagon with the colored side up. And you also want to orient it so that the top and bottom edges are held horizontally. And we're going to start by connecting this bottom left corner and this right corner with a crease, but we're not going to crease all the way across. So just lift up the bottom right corner and pull it in towards the center of the hexagon. Again, we're not going to crease all the way across. We just want to make a crease from this left edge until we hit the center point here. So if you imagine a vertical line running right through the center of the model, that's where you want to stop your crease. So just flatten out the left side of the model, and then make your crease just until you hit that center point. Then you can unfold, and you can see that we've made this small crease here. Since this Bloom is symmetrical, we want to repeat the same step on the remaining 5 sides. So rotate your hexagon clockwise until the next edge is held horizontally along the bottom, and then we're going to repeat the same thing. So again, we want to connect this bottom left corner with this right corner here. So just lift up the bottom right corner, pull it in towards the center of the model until you connect both of those points. And again, we're not going to crease all the way. We just want to make a crease from that left edge until we hit the center point here. So just flatten out the left side of the model make your crease right into the center, and then you can unfold. Then rotate the paper clockwise once again, so the next edge is held horizontally along the bottom, and we're going to repeat the same step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And now we're going to make a small vertical crease at the top of the model. And we're going to do that by aligning the right corner with the left corner here. So essentially we're folding the entire model in half vertically. So align the corners and the edges. And then we're not going to crease all the way. We just want to make a small crease from this top edge down until we hit this diagonal mountain fold here. So just make a small vertical crease on top. And then you can unfold. And you can see that we've made this little vertical crease here. So again, we want to rotate the paper clockwise until the next edge is held horizontally along the top. And then we're going to repeat the same thing. So again, take this right corner and fold it over to the left corner. Essentially, we're folding the entire model in half vertically. So just align the corners and the edges. And then we want to make a small crease from the top edge down until we hit this diagonal mountain fold. So just make that small vertical crease. And then you can unfold. Then rotate your hexagon so the next edge is held horizontally on top. And then we're going to make the same crease on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And now we're going to turn the paper over to the white side. And it's important to note that all of the creases that we've added so far should now be oriented as mountain folds. And we're going to add some valley folds to this side of the paper now. So from here we want to fold up these bottom 2 corners and align them with these bottom 2 crease intersections. So I like to lift up the bottom edge of the hexagon and pull it up until those bottom corners are aligned with the bottom crease intersections. Once everything is aligned, we're not going to crease all the way. We just want to crease from this midpoint all the way over to this right edge. So we're just creasing the right half of that layer. And then you can unfold. Then we're going to rotate the paper clockwise so that the next edge of the hexagon is held horizontally along the bottom. And we're going to repeat the same thing. So again, we want to take these bottom 2 corners and align them with the bottom 2 crease intersections. So just lift up the bottom edge, align those colored corners with the 2 bottom crease intersections. And again, you only want to crease on the right half of the model. So just crease from that midpoint all the way over to the right edge. Then you can unfold. And then we're going to rotate the paper once again so that the next edge of the hexagon is held horizontally along the bottom. And then we're going to repeat this step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And now we're going to turn the paper back over to the colored side. And we want to rotate it clockwise so that it's oriented like this. So now you should have corners at the top and bottom of the model instead of horizontal edges. And now we're going to make a horizontal crease. And we're going to do that by aligning this bottom left corner with the intersection between this diagonal crease and this left edge. So this is one of the creases we made in the previous step. We just want to align it with this point here. I like to do this by lifting up the bottom portion of the model and pulling it up. And again, you want to line up the white corner with that crease intersection. So just line up both points, just like this. And as you're doing this, you'll notice that the raw edge will align with these 2 crease intersections as well. So you can use those points as references. And once everything is aligned, we're not going to crease all the way. We actually want to start at the midpoint, and we want to crease all the way over to the left edge. So we're just creasing the left half of the model here. And then you can unfold. And you can see that we've made this horizontal valley fold here. Then we're going to rotate the hexagon clockwise so that the next corner is held at the bottom of the model. And then we want to do the same thing. So again, we want to line up this bottom left corner with this point here, which is the intersection between this diagonal crease and the left edge. So I like to just lift up the bottom portion of the model, pull it up to align the bottom left corner with that crease intersection. Once both points are aligned, you'll notice that this raw edge will align with these 2 crease intersections as well. So once all of those points are aligned, then we want to start our crease at the center and extend it all the way over to the left edge. So we're just creasing the left portion of the model. And then you can unfold. Then we're going to rotate the hexagon clockwise once again, so the next corner is held at the bottom of the model. And we want to repeat the same step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And then we're going to turn the paper over to the white side. And now we're going to make some small vertical creases. So to do that, we're essentially folding the model in half vertically. So take this right edge and fold it over to the left edge. Align the corners and the edges. And we're not going to crease all the way. I want you to notice this horizontal crease that we just created that hits the right side of the model. We want to make our crease from that point all the way down to the bottom of the model. So just flatten out the bottom portion of the model below that horizontal crease. And then you can unfold. And you can see that we've added this vertical crease here. Then we want to rotate the paper clockwise so the next corner of the hexagon is held at the bottom. And we're going to repeat the same thing. So again, take the right edge and fold it over to the left edge. Align the corners and the edges. And then we're not going to crease all the way. Again, you should see this horizontal crease that extends to the right edge, and we want to crease from that point all the way down to the bottom of the model. So just flatten out the bottom portion of the model from that crease down, and then you can unfold. Then we're going to rotate the paper clockwise once again, so the next corner of the hexagon is held at the bottom, and then we want to repeat the same step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And now we're going to rotate the paper clockwise so that the hexagon is oriented like this. Basically, you should have horizontal edges on the top and bottom of the model. And from here, we're going to add some horizontal creases that divide our hexagon into thirds. And we're going to do that by aligning these 2 bottom corners with these 2 crease intersections here. So I like to do this by lifting up the bottom edge, and then you want to pull it up 1/3 the height of the hexagon. So you can sort of estimate. And as you get closer to 1/3, you'll notice that the 2 bottom corners will align with these crease intersections here. So make sure both corners are aligned, and then we're not going to crease all the way. I want you to notice this equilateral triangle that touches the bottom edge. Basically, we don't want to crease through that triangle. So I like to start by creasing from the right corner of that triangle all the way over to the right edge. Again, make sure everything is aligned, then start at the right corner of that triangle, and make your crease all the way over to the right edge. Then we want to do the same thing on the left. So starting at the left corner of the triangle, make your crease all the way over to the left edge. So just make a tiny crease, being careful not to crease inside of this triangle. Once you've made those 2 creases, then you can unfold. You can see that we've made these 2 new horizontal creases here, and we intentionally did not crease inside of this triangle here. So from here, we want to rotate the hexagon clockwise until the next edge is held horizontally along the bottom, and we want to do the same thing. So again, we're going to fold up these 2 bottom corners and align them with these crease intersections. I suggest lifting up the bottom portion of the model and pulling it up 1/3 the height of the hexagon. And as you get closer to 1/3, you'll notice that the 2 bottom corners will align with these crease intersections. So make sure everything is aligned. And again, we're not going to crease all the way. You can see this equilateral triangle on the left side, and basically we don't want to crease through that region. So starting at the right corner of that equilateral triangle, you can make your crease all the way over to the right edge. And you want to do the same thing on the left side. So starting at the left corner of that triangle, you can make your crease all the way over to the left edge. So you're making 2 separate horizontal creases, intentionally not creasing inside of that triangle. And then you can unfold. Then we're going to rotate the paper clockwise so the next edge of the hexagon is held horizontally along the bottom. And then we want to repeat the same step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical. And then we're going to turn the paper over to the colored side. And we're going to add some final vertical creases. You should notice an empty diamond shape on the bottom right portion of the model, and essentially we want to create a vertical crease running through it. So to do that, I like to align this bottom right corner with this point here, which is essentially the left corner of this equilateral triangle. To do that, simply lift up the right portion of the model and pull it over to the left. Work your way over to the left, again aligning that bottom right corner with that crease intersection. And as you do this, you'll notice that the right corner will also align with this crease intersection here. So there's quite a few reference points for this. Once everything is aligned, we don't want to crease all the way. We just want to make a vertical crease through that diamond shape here. So we're just going to flatten out the bottom portion of the model, just like this, in between these two diagonal creases. Then you can unfold. And you can see that we've added this vertical crease here. Next, we're going to rotate the paper clockwise, so the next edge of the hexagon is held horizontally along the bottom. And then we're going to do the same thing. So again, we want to create a vertical crease here by aligning this bottom right corner with this point here, which is the left corner of this equilateral triangle. Again, lift up the right side of the model and pull it over to the left. Again, aligning that bottom right corner with that crease intersection. So just slide it over like this. And once those points are aligned, you'll also notice that this right corner will align with this crease intersection here. And there's quite a few other reference points. So again, we only want to make a crease through this diamond at the bottom. So we're just going to make a small crease in between these two diagonal creases here. Then you can unfold. Then we're going to rotate the paper once again. So rotate clockwise so that the next edge of the hexagon is held horizontally at the bottom. And then we want to repeat the same step on the remaining 4 sides. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should be symmetrical, and you've finished all of the pre-creasing for the bloom. The initial collapse is a little bit tricky, but once we've reinforced all of the creases that we've made, it's pretty easy to collapse a bloom all in one single step. So if you followed along up to this point, all of the creases should already be in the correct orientation, so we won't need to reverse any of the creases. But we do need to reinforce them just to help the bloom take its shape. So we're going to start by lifting up the model, and I like to start with these creases, which extend from the corner of the central hexagon out to the corner of the paper. You'll notice we have 6 of those creases here, and we want to reinforce all of those and make sure that they're mountain folds. So we're going to start with this crease on the right, and we just want to pinch it from the top to make sure it's a mountain fold. Then we want to rotate clockwise and repeat the same thing on all 6 sides. So we're just reinforcing those creases that extend from the inner hexagon out to the corners of the paper. In the process, you'll notice the model becomes more 3-dimensional, and the mountain folds around the central hexagon will be reinforced as well. You can reinforce those again if you'd like. Now we're going to focus on this mountain fold on the right, and I want you to notice that there's a parallel mountain fold just above it. We want to reinforce that mountain fold next. So I recommend just pinching that mountain fold from the top, and you can see that we now have these 2 parallel mountain folds. So once you have that, I recommend rotating the model clockwise till you get to that next mountain fold. You'll see that there's a parallel mountain fold above it, and we just want to reinforce that one as well. So just continue working your way around the hexagon, reinforcing those additional mountain folds. And now you'll notice that we have 6 3-dimensional segments like this. And at this point, I like to look at the model from the side. So hold one of the edges of the hexagon horizontally on top, and I want you to notice the 3 shapes that are touching this top edge. On the right side, we have this diamond, and on the left side, we have these 2 equilateral triangles. And you can see that we have valley folds that divide all 3 of those shapes in half. So what we want to do is ensure that the outlines of those shapes are mountain folds, and the creases that divide them in half are valley folds. So let's start with this diamond here. We want to start by reinforcing the outline as mountain folds. So you should have 3 mountain folds there. And the crease that divides it in half should be a valley fold. So we're just going to reinforce that as well. And you can unfold it. And you'll notice the same pattern with this inner diamond here. Once you've reinforced the creases in the diamond, we're going to move over to the left to one of these equilateral triangles. Again, we want the outline of the triangle to be mountain folds, so we can just pinch those creases from the top. And we want the crease that divides it in half to be a valley fold. So just bring the 2 mountain folds together to reinforce that valley fold in the middle. And you can see that we've reinforced those creases there. Then we move on to the next equilateral triangle over on the left. Again, we want the outline of the triangle to be mountain folds, and the crease that divides it in half to be a valley fold. So we're just going to reinforce all 3 of those creases here. And now that we've reinforced the creases in those 3 shapes, we want to rotate the model clockwise, so one of the edges of the hexagon is held horizontally on top. And then we want to do the same thing. So you have your diamond shape here, and you have 2 equilateral triangles. So we're just going to move right to left, reinforcing the creases on all 3 shapes. Again, the creases should already be in the correct orientation. You're just reinforcing them to make it easier to collapse. Once you've done those three, rotate the model once again. Start with the diamond, reinforce those creases, and then move on to the two equilateral triangles. Just like this. And continue your way around the entire hexagon. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, your model should look like this, and you can see that it's ready to just about twist into place. And now I want you to look around the model for all of the remaining diamonds. And basically what we want to do is go around the entire model and make sure that every single diamond has an outline of mountain folds. And the crease that divides each diamond in half should be a valley fold. Just work your way around the model, reinforcing any creases to make sure they follow that pattern. And we should be in pretty good shape after reinforcing all of the other creases. So once your model looks like this, and you've double-checked every diamond to make sure they follow that pattern, then we're going to start the collapse. This step is difficult to describe, but it should be fairly easy now that we've reinforced all of the necessary creases. So just keep the diamond pattern in mind while we collapse the model. And what I like to do is find the central hexagon, and then you want to locate the diamond that's attached to the central hexagon from this top edge here. And basically we want to fold the diamond in half along this existing valley fold. So we're going to fold that diamond in half, pulling it in towards that central hexagon, just like this, and the model will not lie flat. So what we want to do is hold it in place, and then rotate the model clockwise so that the next edge of the central hexagon is held on top. Then we want to repeat the same thing. So if you look at the model from the top, you want to focus on this diamond shape here, that's connected to the central hexagon at its top edge here. So again, we want to fold this diamond in half along the existing valley fold. So fold it in half, again by pulling that diamond in towards the central hexagon, just like this. The model will not lie flat, but you just want to hold it in place, and then rotate the paper and do the same thing. So now this is the next edge of the central hexagon. If we slightly rotate the paper, you can locate the diamond on top. We just want to fold that diamond in half, again by pulling it in towards the center of the model. The model will not lie flat, so we're just going to hold that in place, rotate, and do the same thing. So once again, this is the next edge of the central hexagon. If you look at the model from the top, we have this diamond shape here. We want to fold it in half by pulling the diamond in towards that central hexagon, just like this. Again, the model will not lie flat, but we just want to hold it in place. Then we're going to rotate the paper again so that there's a new edge on top of the central hexagon. You can locate the diamond that's touching it. So we want to fold that diamond in half along the existing valley fold. So just pull it in towards the center of the model. Again, hold it in place. And once you've done that on all 6 sides, the model should mostly be collapsed. You can see that we have this hexagon shape at the top. And if you've done everything perfectly, the model will lie flat at this point. But that probably won't be the case on your first try. So what I recommend doing is holding that central hexagon in place and then looking at the model from the side. We don't want to create any new creases here, so we just want to flatten along existing creases. But if your model doesn't lie flat at this stage, try thinking about the diamond pattern that we focused on before. You can see that we have a diamond shape here and another here. Again, we want the outlines to be mountain folds and the dividing lines to be valley folds. So just following that pattern, we can slowly start to recollapse the model. So you can see that this flap is out of place, but we're just going to follow that pattern, and you'll see that it should collapse nicely. So just work your way around the model. If you focus on the raw edge of the paper, you'll notice the triangles and diamonds that we focused on before. So you just want to make sure that all of those creases are in the correct orientation. So just work your way around the model, just like this. Here we have a triangle shape, so we want to make sure the outline is mountain folds and that inner crease is a valley fold. And you'll slowly start to see the model collapsing. So just work your way around. These triangles look okay. And just work your way all the way around the model. You can see that we need to flatten out the creases on this triangle. So again, make sure the outline is mountain folds and the inner crease is a valley fold. And once you've worked your way all the way around the hexagon, the model will actually lie completely flat along our existing creases. And you can reinforce your creases by hand or use a folding tool to flatten everything out. This is what it should look like on the white side. And if you turn it over to the colored side, you can see that we have this clean hexagon on the back. And once you have this, then your Y6.2 bloom is complete. You should be able to pretty easily unfold the entire bloom and recollapse it in a single smooth motion. And this is the beauty of bloom patterns. We started with this large hexagon and ended up with a flat hexagonal model that is 1/3 the size. As I mentioned earlier, the Y6.2 is a second-order hexagonal Bloom pattern. By tiling the central hexagon with more of the same wedge crease patterns, we can create higher-order Bloom patterns like the Y6.3. And if you get stuck or need some inspiration, be sure to check out all of the photos, videos, and crease patterns available in the video description below. I hope you enjoyed learning about Bloom patterns and folding the Y6.2 today. Special thanks to Kelvin Wang, Dr. Lang, Dr. Howell, and the rest of the BYU research group for collaborating with me on this video. Your research is truly fascinating, and I'm excited to see the real-world applications of Bloom patterns. If you found this video interesting, please hit the like button and leave a comment below. I'd love to hear what you think. And of course, subscribe to my channel for more content like this. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.